I'll just start off by saying we're in this sort of weird transition period now between having been in full lockdown and being back to any sort of normality. There's a sense that we're in the eye of the storm in some ways, in that we had all that kerfuffle as lockdown came in, and then we're in this sort of weird position in the middle now as everyone's working out how and when to return, what the impact will be. And in an economic way, we're probably in the eye of the storm too, in that currently there's lots of people furloughed. The government's given out quite a bit of money in grants and loans. So in some businesses, they're saying they're relatively cash rich. But of course, we're about to have the triple burden of costs hitting us of people coming out of furlough at a time when there is extra cost in implementing social distancing, reduced demand potentially for a lot of businesses, less customers able to access them either virtually or in store or wherever you actually operate. Difficulties with border controls still, and the, not quarantine now, but the difficulties of traveling internationally. And then as we come out the other side again, it's thought that in a period of 9 to 12 months time, there'll be further business failures because people will have to start paying back loans that were interest-free for a 12-month period. So quite a worrying time. And sadly, I think a lot of that is going to result in job losses, and job losses of very skilled people, very, very good people. So we've gone from the sublime to the ridiculous, because Sharon will back me up on this. People were saying there was a skills shortage. You just couldn't get enough trained, skilled people. I think sadly we're going to the other end of the scale when there's going to be a lot of good people out in the market. But the point of this event, recruitment, skills and life after furlough, is to talk about how we get the right people in the right place and what support is out there and what roles are out there. And we have Steve Cardew, who's the chair of Kawasaki Precision Machinery, who also chairs the Employment and Skills Board of the Plymouth Growth Board, and chairs Skills for Plymouth. And he's going to talk to us about Resurgam, the recovery plan for Plymouth, and Skills for Plymouth and the Youth Hub. And we should be joined by Emma Hewitt. I see she's actually joined, and Ed Coley, who can support him with Q&A after that. Caroline Wilson from Big Ant. Welcome, Caroline. She's going to talk to us about the temporary versus permanent employment market and run a little bit through sectors. Caroline is the one marked Gap for some reason on the screen. So I don't know if she's got a job in a retail outlet somewhere and is actually in their storeroom or something, but that's Caroline. Then we have Kirsty Mottram, Skills for Support for the Workforce, who's going to talk about the redundancy support that is available. And Sharon Robbie then will give us a few minutes about what the announcements of Rishi Sunak on employer incentives for trainees, kickstarters and apprentices, which I'm told are very different. And I have promised Craig Hampton-Stone, I think 0.3 of a second at the end, to talk about the army opportunities that are available at the moment. So I don't think I've forgotten anything, but if I have, I apologise, and we'll just wing it as we go. But first off then, I will hand over to Steve Cardew, who's going to talk to us about Resurgam and recovery. So Steve, welcome, and thank you for joining us. Steve, are you muted there? I can't actually hear you. Can anyone hear Steve? Over.
No, you should be able to now, hopefully.
We can, yes. Myself. I think, Steve, don't worry. I think the most common phrase of 2020 is going to be, "You're on mute." So,
yeah, right.
So yeah, Steve,
so hopefully people can now hear me, and thanks for the chamber for giving me the opportunity to raise awareness of the plan. I take it everyone's aware of the Resurgam programme that the city has put in place. I believe the Latin interpretation of Resurgam is "We shall rise again," which was the successful slogan that they used post-Second World War. So part of the Resurgam programme, there's a strategic pillar focused on skills for Plymouth. I've agreed to support the project as the chair of the Employment Skills Board, and I'm supporting Ed Coley and Emma Hewitt, who are the joint project leaders for this particular Skills for Plymouth pillar. And we've also, so far, we've established a steering group of key people across the city. I think we've had 2 or 3 meetings now. This is really so that we can set up past and finish groups to work on specific areas of the plan as we put it together. But I think the harsh reality that we have to face up to is that, as you alluded to just now, Stuart, there just might not be enough jobs for everyone in Plymouth, whereas before we've gone from a situation where there was a skills shortage. From the information that we're getting so far, it seems that that's going to flip itself around, and there's going to be fewer jobs than there are people looking for jobs. So really our response to that, and the first part of our strategic work is to try and establish what is the demand for jobs and where are they. In other words, how can we need to understand what this landscape is going to look like going forward, so that we can match demand with supply. And for us to be able to do that, the voice of the employer is really key. And it's through this group and through forums like this that the employer has its voice and has the opportunity to actually influence this plan that's being put together. Obviously, there's government funding and skills that are coming out, and which is very welcome. But as Sharon's going to help us in a minute, it's not easy to decipher and understand what all this funding is about. And part of the work that we're going to do is to try to decipher that and really help people to understand what's the best route for them to take. To do that, we can't do this alone. We're going to need to have skills delivery partners to meet the employer demands. So again, I'll keep repeating through this that really we want the voice of the employer in this. We're asking local employers to that end to actually respond through our business health check survey. Now, I know everyone's probably got surveyed to death over this, but I would ask people to respond positively when they get the opportunity to give us an indication of what the picture is looking like in Plymouth. And this might be through the various networking groups. We've been working very closely with various sector leaders, people like Steve Gary with the Plymouth Manufacturing Group. Emma, we're very fortunate. Emma also represents construction through Building for Plymouth. So they're 2 very large sectors that we've got some good information, but it's equally as important that we get good quality information of what's really happening across the sectors from all of the sector leads. So, you know, I'd ask people to be generous with their time, because this situation, as you alluded to also, Stuart, it's an evolving situation. And I don't think we fully understand, and the employers don't fully understand yet what the future is going to look like. And we appreciate that, but we've got to try to understand as the situation evolves as best we can. So, as I said earlier, we can't do this alone. We're working very closely. We don't want to recreate and duplicate routes and organizations and people that are doing stuff. We want to work very much in collaboration with other groups. So we're working very closely with economic development across Plymouth City Council, for instance, and the skills teams with DWP. So it's important that we use those established routes that we've already got to gather in info. Yeah, and it's, you know, our part of this task is to actually understand where the jobs are, and when we understand that, we can then work with our partners to set up skills training, etc. And in some instances, it might be that we're taking young people and guiding them in the right direction. We're going to be doing that through the setting up of a youth hub. And I think we're going to hear a little bit more about that. I'll ask Emma Hewitt later to explain a little bit more about the youth hub, which is going to be set up. We're also going to have an adult hub as well, because there's going to be an awful lot of people finding themselves out of work for the first time, that have never been in this situation before. So it's important that we don't ignore that group. And then, of course, we've got the younger people that are coming into and finishing education, that are coming into a landscape, and we've got to give them some good guidance as well. So really, we're stepping into the unknown, and we want lots of input and collaboration from other people to make sure that we don't waste the opportunities and the funding. I'm a little bit skeptical sometimes of the way in which government fund things. They throw money at it, and they don't always worry too much about how effective the use of those funds has been. And I think it's up to us to make sure that we make the best use we can of the opportunities and the funding streams that are coming through. So, you know, this is an opportunity really to ask the employers that are around the table to actually make a positive contribution, so that we can make a success of this particular project and program. So I think hopefully that gives everyone an idea of what Skills for Plymouth is about. You know, I'm happy for anyone to ask any questions, and I've got Ed and Emma that will help me to answer.
Thank you, Steve. Is that survey you mentioned live yet?
It has gone out to, so as part of the Resurgam programme, each of the key sectors has, there's been a sector lead which has been identified, and it's been shared with some of them. I don't think it's open into the wider public yet, or employers, but I think that will happen. And when it's been approved, I think I'm right in saying that we're going through various approval processes. There's a cabinet meeting tomorrow. Once cabinet has approved that, that's the local cabinet, then I think everyone will be comfortable with sending that out and sharing it with the chamber, for instance. And then
well, you're ahead of me. You knew what I was going to
back on. So I think that will happen within the next few days, Stuart, I think.
Okay, great. We'll happily put that out for you. And I completely get what you mean about the value for money and what have you being sent out. I noticed in the news today that Primark are saying they won't take £30 million of government money in the furlough bonus schemes. They said we were always going to keep them on and bring them back anyway. So that's quite something. I think it's very expensive PR if it's just for PR, but I think that's a very laudable position. So, thank you, Steve. Really appreciate you joining us and coming onto the call and giving us that update on Skills for Plymouth. So I'll hand over to Caroline Wilson, who's going to talk to us about the sectors and also the temporary versus permanent recruitment.
Hi, everybody. I'm Caroline from Big Ant Group. As Stuart has said, I wanted to touch a little bit on the temporary and the permanent. And the reason why is because pre-COVID, it was a bit kind of even, but during this situation, temporary employment has kind of skyrocketed. Obviously not suitable for all sectors, but what we're finding is a lot of our clients are wanting to take on people temporarily. Some to get, you know, up to date with the workload after being shut, and then just some because they don't want to make the commitment. With regards to the permanent side, obviously we deal with all sectors. Big Ant particularly deal with everything other than healthcare and education. And what we're seeing with the permanent side of things is that it has slowed right down, and there is a huge level increase on candidates. Now, before COVID, the kind of sectors that, you know, were struggling for skills were engineering, particularly vehicle technicians and things like that. Whereas what we're finding now is, like you've just been informed, is that there's a lot more candidates for those roles. But there's certain industries that haven't been affected, and actually they're so busy that they need more staff for things like accountants, finance. The finance sector has increased. But, you know, candidates are going directly to employers, writing to them, because there's a lot more people for those employers to have a pick from. What we have to be a little bit careful with is, obviously there's a huge pool of people, there's a huge pool of genuine candidates out there that were made redundant or similar, but there's also going to still be the candidates that unfortunately these companies at the beginning of furlough took, you know, the advantage of, like, you know, this person isn't right for my company, etc. I would say that the checks that employers do are more important now than ever before with regards to talking to the candidates about their CV, their futures, because you're going to get a lot of people that are wanting just to have a job, to get an income rather than, let's say, a career. It's very unusual times at the moment, and it's too early to say kind of what's going to happen with the market. Some are going to do really, really well, and some, unfortunately, you know, again, lots of people are going to be made redundant, and that's going to put a lot more people out there. So I know it's not quite 5 minutes, but if there's any questions, please feel free to ask. You're on mute, see? Stuart.
Oh, having told everyone else off for that, I'm on mute. So my apologies for that. So yeah, thank you for that. Really interesting that that's what you're seeing. It's probably, actually, because you've given us an extra minute there, a good time to slide Craig Hampton-Stone into the picture. And I think it actually fits very well what you're talking there, because you were talking about people wanting jobs, not careers. And I think Craig might have something to say about career opportunities and what that can bring to it. But rather than steal his thunder, Craig, if you unmute yourself and come in there, we'd be very pleased to hear from you. I hope I haven't dropped you in it at short notice there.
No, that's absolutely fine. Thanks very much. So for those of you who don't know me, I do know quite a few people on the meeting. I Lieutenant Colonel Craig Hampton-Stone, and I command 165 Port and Maritime Regiment, Royal Logistic Corps, which is the Army Reserve unit based in Plymouth. I'm coming to the end of my tenure now as the commanding officer, but for the last couple of years I've clearly been waxing lyrical about the fantastic opportunities that the regiment presents. The regiment is actually spread over the whole country, but we have the regimental headquarters and one headquarters squadron and a task squadron, all based in Plymouth at Darriford Army Reserve Centre. We've also got a squadron over at Bodmin as well, so there'll be opportunities for people there. But essentially, the Army Reserve Regiment, it's no longer the days of the TA, you know, where you used to have a very popular kind of drinking club on a Wednesday night and opportunities to get out of the house for a couple of hours. The Army Reserve now, as you may recall from a few years ago, the Army Reserve is here to genuinely provide capability and to augment the regular army that has been cut a couple of years ago, and indeed may well be again now. So because of that, the Army Reserve does present some fantastic opportunities, either for, as is the case for many of my soldiers and officers, for a full-time career, or for the majority of people, a part-time opportunity which can be exploited as much or as little as you want, really. So I've got soldiers and officers that can be employed for about 200 days a year, or some that might only do a couple of weeks. The amount of time that you do is almost entirely dependent upon how much you want to commit and what your circumstances are. But the fantastic thing about being in the Army Reserve is it clearly provides a number of different opportunities for you. So we have trade opportunities in the regiment. Obviously, we're a port and maritime regiment, so we have port operators, which are essentially the same as stevedores from a port, mariners, that are the guys that pilot our small vessels, and marine engineers that do exactly what they say on the tin. They keep our vessels operating out in the water. We've also got chefs, and we've got a human resources specialists as well, but the technical trades is what we've principally got. So if you join as a soldier, then you will clearly be put into one of those trades, and throughout your Army Reserve career, whatever age you start that, because I did have 2 years ago a 54-year-old private soldier who joined the Army at the age of 54, proving that it is genuinely open to everybody. but depending on what age you join and how long you join for, you will be put through a trade career over 5, 10, 15 years, whatever it is, where you'll go on your trade courses, learn your skills. Concurrent to that, be given your leadership courses, your basics such as literacy and numeracy. But the most important thing, and this is what I said at Plymouth City Conversations about 2 years ago, you will receive the best personal development and those niche skills that you just can't get anywhere else, because you will be part of a squadron, part of a regiment, where you will get to do some of the most tremendous things, whether or not it's going out on simple exercises, to participating in operational deployments around the world, to adventure training, sport. You will be taken out of your comfort zone and pushed through what you previously perceived to be your own limitations. And it's just fantastic. So coming back to the skills gap, that Army Reserve career can just provide a tremendous amount of personal development that if you as an employer were to encourage one of your employees to go and join the Army Reserve, you will get a different person back one way or another, hopefully for the better. But it's a fantastic opportunity. And there are so many people that just wonder when they get to 55 years old and they stop serving in the Army Reserve, they wonder why they didn't do it earlier. And it's a huge opportunity missed. So we are obviously based at Derriford Army Reserve Centre. We're on Facebook, social media, Twitter, Instagram, etc. If anybody would like to know anything more about it, we have got a lot of recruiting still to do. We have still got to grow, and this is, like I said, this is to generate genuine capability in support of defence tasks. So it's serious stuff. Equally, it's great fun, and I just wish more people would join it and find out what it's all about.
Thank you, Craig. Forgive me, I've got to move things on, but could you put if there's a website or contact details that people should need, you could put that in the chat so people could contact you.
Certainly.
I will tell the group that when Craig came to speak at City Conversations, I sort of, as only Stuart Alford can, sort of open mouth, put foot in it and said, yeah, but why would any employer let their employee go off for weeks on end to, do something they think's fun? And he put it far more eloquently than me, but he basically, Craig said, well, so you not want your staff member to have fully funded the best leadership and skills training in the world and add value to you, and they are being paid for it. Yeah, very good point. Okay, so well put, Craig. And I'm a big supporter of what you're doing, and I can see that for some people this could be the perfect opportunity to upskill and seek a new opportunity in life. So thank you, Craig. I'm just going to rather rudely. Oh no, you've muted yourself. Thank you. Before we ended up with a feedback thing going on. So now Kirsty Mottram, skills support for the workforce, mostly with the redundancy program. Kirsty, are you still on the call and able to come in there?
I am still on the call, but I think I'm frozen. So I'll just come off video again.
Well, yes.
Try to come back on again.
We can hear you. Well, that's the important thing. I can't see you, but I can hear you. But
oh dear, yeah, a few technical difficulties. I have put the video on there, so sorry about that, guys. But I hope you can all hear me okay. So I think most of you know me by now, but for those who don't, as Stuart said, my name is Kirsty Mottram and I'm the Partnership Coordinator for Serco's Skills Support for Workforce and Redundancy Programme. It's one project with two strands, and it's a LEP initiative which is co-financed by the ESF and the ESFA. So for the skills support for workforce, this is aimed at businesses to help you upskill your existing staff. So if there are staff members at the moment who you feel could benefit from some additional skills training to help them either add value to their existing job role or to progress within the the company they're in, then we can support them access to skills training. But what's also been sort of taking more of a priority at the moment, obviously with the COVID pandemic, is the skills support for redundancy strand. So this is aimed at businesses who are either at, there you go, hopefully you can all see me now. Businesses who are at risk of making redundancies, or individuals who've been made redundant within the last 3 months. And that 3-month window is really important, because if we don't start to work with somebody within the 3 months, they won't be eligible for the project. So with the skill support for redundancy, it's looking at skills where there are gaps. So it may be that, for example, I'm in consultation with a large business at the moment in the local area. They have a slightly older workforce. The staff have been there for 20, 30 plus years. So we're looking at supporting them with an employability package, working with the National Careers Service to offer them that impartial advice and guidance and support, help them identify where their transferable skills can be used. And if somebody would like to completely retrain, they can have those conversations with us, and we'll be able to work with them either through the project and also our wider stakeholder network as well. We can support any occupational sector, and the eligibility criteria is that somebody needs to be the minimum age of 16, eligible to live and work within the UK. And the other thing to mention as well, which I've noticed recently, I take it for granted, but any accessing the training has to have access to either a laptop or computer. You won't be able to access the training through a phone, a digital phone device. What I can do, so the key thing really at the moment is just to really support those businesses who are having to make the difficult decisions of redundancies. So if you are unfortunately one of those businesses, or you know of anybody who needs that support, please do contact me, and I can put my details in a moment in the chat. And also, if you go onto our website, there is a lot of really useful information there as well. Also, just to mention as well, is not only do I work with businesses, but I'm also working with key stakeholders within the region as well. So recently, last week, I had a conversation with Ed and Emma about the Resurgam and also Skill for Plymouth project that you'll be hearing about in the moment. And what Serco would like to do is embed ourselves into the rapid response team. So we are offering that really holistic approach and collaborative approach with the National Careers Service, the job centres, and also, like Steve mentioned, with the economic development officers within the different localities as well. So it's looking at offering that full support and approach to a business. So if anybody is interested, please contact me at kirsty.mottram@serco.com, or you can visit our website at www.serco-ese.com, but I will pop the details in the chat in a moment.
Thank you, Kirsty. Great, yeah, and please, yes, put those details in the chat. That would be great. So I think because of time, rather than me waffle on again, I will hand straight over to Sharon Robbie, who's the Managing Director of Devon and Cornwall Training Provider Network, who's going to give us an update about the employer incentives for trainees, Kickstarters and apprentices. Sharon.
Thank you, Stuart. Can you hear me? Yeah.
I can hear you.
Lovely. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak today. So fantastic to see so many on the call. Some old faces. See my old my ex-boss is on the call, so I'll have to be on my best behaviour. What I wanted to touch base around was the key headlines that came out of the Chancellor's summer statement last week, especially those some of the incentives that they're pushing, because skills and jobs, as we've just been hearing, skills, jobs are at the forefront centre of our economic recovery planning as we come out of this pandemic. So there's an awful lot of money being thrown thrown at skills, education and training, and they talk about a skills-led recovery. We've heard about the fact that there are not so many vacancies. We've got lots of candidates. We've got the calibre of candidates will be much higher, and we're expecting, as we see the furlough tapering, we're expecting to see more redundancies. We've heard about a number of large organisations already communicating their intent to lay people off. Stuart mentioned Primark not taking the government's money back in January, but Centre Parks this morning said, yes, we will be taking it. So I think it's going to be a little bit who's going to take it, who's going to keep it. But there's 1.5 billion of targeted temporary support in skills, education, training. And the real point of this is to offer clear routes into employment and to save as many jobs as possible. So there are some employer incentives, as I've mentioned, and there are 3 key areas. And I think there are some slides there. Have you got them, Helen? Lovely. And there's 3 key areas: kickstart, traineeships and apprenticeships. And it's a real focus on those in danger of becoming NEET. That's not in education, employment or training, but also those who may be made redundant. If we could have the next one, if you could go down to number 3. Can you just go, do you want me to go? Do you want to move it down? If you just use that down arrow on the PDF, it should just move it down. Okay, well, I'll start talking about the kickstart.
Leave it with me and I'll keep on.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. So to talk about the Kickstart programme, so a DWP-led programme, so Department of Work and Pensions programme, 2 billion investment in this scheme, and it's aimed at 16 to 24-year-olds. There is a criteria that exists for those aged 16 to 17 because those who can access this Kickstarter programme need to be claiming universal credit. And there's a specific criteria for those aged 16 to 17. So claiming universal credit, unemployed, and these are for individuals who are furthest away from the jobs market. They will be working with Job Centre Plus coaches, job coaches, and as you've probably heard from the Chancellor, huge amount of money being thrown at JCP, DWP in order to increase the number of job coaches available. The Kickstart programme is 13 weeks of intensive coaching and then 13 weeks with a work placement. And it consists of 25 hours per week work placement, which is a minimum, with 100% of the relevant national minimum wage by age group being paid. If you go to the next slide, Helen. So for an example, a 24-year-old would attract £6,500 wage subsidy. Employers can top up the wages and they can add hours. So if an employer wants somebody on the Kickstart programme to do more than the 25 hours a week, they can actually add to that. And there are no cap on the number of placements. The progression, where are we trying to get people to go to next, is into an apprenticeship or into a job. And as I said, there's a real focus on reducing the potential numbers of NEETs. In particular, we're looking at young people in years 11 and years 13 who would be leaving school this summer. And we've already talked about the lack or the reduction in vacancies, and that works for apprenticeships. We're seeing between 60 and 70% reduction in apprenticeship vacancies here in the Southwest at this moment in time. Could I have the next slide, please? One thing to note that Kickstarters cannot also be an apprentice. However, we would look to progress them onto a traineeship or an apprenticeship programme. And progression onto other programs allows employers to access further incentives. So there's a real opportunity here to gain a young person, bring them into your organisation and really give them some support. The funding applications open in August and the scheme will commence in September. But there is a real need for meaningful quality jobs and training. It needs to be attached to some robust quality training. And the jobs, we want to see young people who are taking these jobs, these opportunities, actually having a very meaningful experience. The other area which the government have really placed a lot of focus, and there's been a lot of excitement, and I know Mr. Davies is on the call and he'll have a wry smile on his face, I'm sure, because traineeships are not new. They've been around for quite some time. It's just that they haven't been particularly sexy. People haven't really got them. And the apprenticeships are supposed to be in the flagship programme, and traineeships have sort of sat underneath. However, with the reduction or with the lack of apprenticeship opportunities, traineeships are coming into their own. And we're certainly seeing the Prime Minister saying traineeships are the way forward. So they've added another 111 million into that scheme, and they're aiming to triple participation. So traineeship is very different to a Kickstart programme, and it's different to an apprenticeship. And it's not just about work experience. It is aimed at 16 to 24-year-olds. 6 weeks minimum, and at the moment they've extended it to 12 months maximum, but normally it would be 6 months. And there are 3 core elements for a traineeship, and this is where it's vital that people understand this difference. The traineeship is made up of employability skills, English and maths, and that all important quality work experience. And I've put there, quality work experience is absolutely key. We don't want our young people going into a traineeship and not getting that meaningful work experience. There is an employer incentive. If you take on a trainee, each employer will receive £1,000 per trainee. 10 trainees a maximum per employer. However, no salary is paid to a trainee, but we would expect an employer to cover the transport or lunch costs for that young person. So £1,000 per trainee, clear progression routes needed, and really strong careers advice and guidance and additional support. There is talk of increasing the age range. As I said, it's 16 to 24 at the moment, but that is not confirmed. And there has been talk last week on a call I was on at national level of focusing some of this traineeship funding in areas of deprivation. And they were talking about doing that by ward. But again, that isn't confirmed. But traineeships are absolutely critical, perhaps, for some of our young people. And if you look at the next slide, traineeships had a ceiling, so you couldn't do a traineeship if you already had a level 3 qualification. Level 3 qualification is A level. So they have removed last week the ceiling, the level 3 ceiling. That means that those who have been studying their A levels at school and were leaving school this summer, or already left, would now be able to access a traineeship. Now, we've got a number of young people, year 13s, who would have been thinking about going to university, but with the universities changing how they deliver their programs, lots of it is online, that blended but mainly online offer, lots of young people are deferring their placement. They don't want to go to university if it's all online. They actually want to go to the place and experience university in the full. So actually a traineeship might be a fantastic opportunity for somebody who's left school and who was looking to go to university, is going to hold on to that, doesn't want to go abroad on a gap year because of all the various issues, but actually will give them some really, really good work experience. One thing to note though, that not all providers offer traineeships. And my organisation is currently compiling a provider offer. We're working with Plymouth City Council, but also the Heart of the Southwest LEP on who actually is offering traineeships and in which specific areas. And the other thing there is not all have access to funding. However, we've just been informed that the ESFA, the Employment Skills Funding Agency, is opening up procurement activity to increase the number of providers to be able to offer traineeships, because we are seeing lots of people asking about these. And then the next thing to look at on that Chancellor's statement is apprenticeships. Apprenticeships, as we've got a fantastic tradition here, strong tradition of apprenticeships here in the Southwest. They announced additional support last week. So between August 2020 and the 31st of January 2021, there is a £3,000 employer incentive to take on a 16 to 18-year-old apprentice. Okay, that £3,000 is made up of £2,000 incentive and the existing £1,000. £2,000 incentive for a 19 to 24-year-old and £1,500 incentive for a 25 plus. There are no wage subsidies. So there is talk already about, would an employer take a Kickstarter because they get wage subsidy, even though they only get them for 6 months, or would they take the apprentice? So there is talk about, and there's a few rumblings. If I could have the next slide, please. So as I said, the current vacancies are reduced by up to 75%, and some employers are pausing their recruitment. Caroline, it was interesting to note what you said about the sectors that are perhaps taking on. We are seeing lots of interest from health and social care. The construction sector is starting to wake up, but the sectors that have been decimated have been hospitality, travel, tourism, leisure. So those opportunities don't exist. So there's a real concern there. The concern about the looming spike in redundant apprentices is another area that we're looking at, and the government are setting up a redundancy support package for apprentices who become displaced because their businesses either make them redundant or they go to the wall. The employer incentive, whereby if you take an employee who's been furloughed and you take them back on until January 2021, that £1,000, that also is attached to apprentices as well. And we've had lots of apprentices who have been furloughed. If an employer takes them back on, they will receive that £1,000 if they're still on the books January 2021. So we're using traineeships to act as a pipeline, because lots of our employers are telling us that they've paused recruitment now on apprenticeships, but they really do need an extra pair of hands. The traineeship incentive of £1,000 would give them a little bit of support with getting some extra hands into the business. And in effect, a traineeship offers that try before you buy. With employers pausing recruitment, perhaps to the new year, this gives an employer a chance to see what a particular person is like in the workplace and perhaps to move them on into an apprenticeship later. We are waiting for more information, and as that comes out, I will share it with Helen and the team, because it's really important. This is, as you said at the very beginning, Stuart, it's a moving feast. We've actually got so much information coming out. Things are changing all the time. I wanted just to share with you this last piece, which is around sixth form leavers. And I don't know if you're all aware of this, but the government have actually thrown some more money for the 2020-21 academic year. So those are young people who are about to leave school, okay, or college, they actually can stay on for a third and final year of study. And this is very much targeted at high value level 2 and level 3 courses. So very much around those STEM based subjects. So there are subjects that are being mooted that they wouldn't cover, but they're really keen to support those year 13 school leavers, and we are actually waiting for more detail on this particular programme as well. Hope that helps, Stuart. There was a quick canter. Thank you, Helen.
Hello, I was muted, wasn't I? I was waffling on. Oh my God, I'm obviously going senile. So that was a very quick canter is what I was saying, and thank you so much. It was a heck of a lot to take in there. Would it be possible to share the slides with the attendees?
Yeah, I've sent them already.
Yeah, but it's okay to share them.
Yeah.
Well, be good, because there's a lot to take in there. Whew, wow, that was a whistle stop, and my mind's blowing with it. I guess, like a load of you, I was also thinking, oh, could I use that? Would that be useful? How do we, so we've got to think about things. Olivia, wouldn't mind me saying, you're an apprentice, and your apprenticeship comes to an end, I think, September, October time. So, there's lots to think about there, isn't there, about ways we might use these schemes to ensure we can either keep staff or take on additional. So that's great. So just before I open it up to Q&A, and please put your hand up in the participants function or ask a question in the chat function. Before I do, I just want to perhaps hand over to someone else. Helen, please take over.
Charlie wants to have his say, obviously. I was just going to suggest, actually, that Emma Hewitt, with the launch pad and the youth hub and so on, I just think that that's sort of bringing everything together, whether you just take literally 2 or 3 minutes just to explain to everybody what this launch pad is and how that might unify everything we've been talking about already this afternoon.
Okay, thanks, Helen. Can you hear me? Yeah, great. So just to explain, what I think we all recognise is that there's loads of really good provision, there's loads of really good service, there's lots of really great players, many of whom are here today with us. And kind of from an individual journey point of view, someone who's just being confronted with potentially losing their income, got served redundancy notice, or you're a young person trying to come out of the education system into this quite scary place with uncertainty of your grades and the world kind of moving around you, we felt as a city we would do our people much greater service if we could actually bring everything together and hide the wiring. So skills is a really complex picture, and what we want to create and we intend to create is this one-stop go-to place for local people called the Skills Launchpad. And we kind of create this front door everyone can come through. If you are a young person, 16 to 24, you would drop into the youth hub and you would be served appropriately through that process. If you are 25 years plus, you would drop into the adult hub. And then all of us who have valuable provision, services, can help support those individuals through their next steps. So we know we need to enable our people to have the right skills to fill the jobs that come up, whether those jobs are available tomorrow or further down the field. We've got a duty really as a city to make sure that those people don't just go on training courses and drop off the cliff at the end. We actually, as Steve was talking about earlier, understand what our local employers need today, what they're going to need coming up in the future, and make sure as best we can we dovetail that demand and supply piece so people have got the right skills to deliver the jobs that we need. So the Skills Launchpad is all about that people journey, that skills journey. We treat people as individuals and we help them understand what's going on in the marketplace around them, understand, as we've talked about, hospitality, retail, leisure, kind of falling off a bit of a cliff. That might not be where you're going to get an apprenticeship or a traineeship, or it might be not worth you going to college to do a course in that subject area, given the situation. So this is about trying to tell the story about what's really going on in Plymouth now, where we're going next, packaging up all the impartial advice and guidance that we can give individuals, extra support they might need on maths, English, digital skills, whatever that might look like, and make sure they're also work ready. Some of the individuals at risk in the organisation that Kirsty referred to earlier haven't got CVs. They wouldn't know where to start doing a CV. They wouldn't know, God, I haven't had an interview for 20 years. So how do we help support these individuals that when that job comes up, they are as best placed as possible with both the technical skills they might need to do that job, but they feel confident and they feel that they've got the tools to enable them to apply successfully and move forward. So Skills for Plymouth and the Launchpad is all about helping our local people get from A to B, whatever A to B looks like for them, and the different skills interventions we need to put into play. And I think it's really important to communicate the success we've had with partners and stakeholders on this. People are getting right behind this. They're saying, actually, we all have to form an army around our people of Plymouth. We can't do stuff in silos. We can't be thinking about, these are my learners, these are my targets, these are my money. We've got to literally bring that all together to do the best thing we can do to get our people of Plymouth into the best possible employment situation they can get themselves into. I think everything that Sharon talked about, we need to maximise those opportunities for the city and translate that really quickly so our employers buy in and they really understand it. They don't need to understand all the wiring that all of us have to contend with, this moving beast. But what does it mean to help our employers recover through this economic crisis? Okay, how does it help them deliver and fill those gaps and the future skills we need? And from an individual point of view, I've just lost my job. I need some help. I need you to tell me what my options are and give me as much support as possible. And many people in our society, not just in Plymouth, will have no idea about how to take those first steps. So that Skills Launchpad will be a united front to say, this is the door you go through, and behind it, we are all set up to hide all the wiring to help you successfully through that next step. And I think it's also very important to realise that skills isn't just the hard qualifications. It's not just getting your CV done. It's actually giving our people their resilience. It's about giving them some hope. It's about helping them see that change, you can get through change, and the world hasn't ended here. And I think it's a really important human aspect to the Skills Launchpad that we do that and we do it really well, because if we don't, if we start pushing people down a journey and they do training courses to no end, it's going to lead to more and more problems for the city. So we've got to get a grip really earlier about as Steve was saying, what do our employers really need? Where are those real opportunities coming up? If it's not today, what's coming up next? And how can we gear up our citywide skills response to make sure the young people who take their next steps into whatever that looks like is more likely to drop into an apprenticeship, a traineeship, a job, whatever that looks like, and our adults get into the best position to improve their employment prospects as and when the market comes up. Because there won't be enough jobs, there won't be enough apprenticeship vacancies to fulfill everything our local people want. So this supply and demand is going to be a really critical piece, and we as a city, the Skills Launchpad Plymouth is the go-to place that we would love all of your support to direct local people to. And as Kirsty said, we're joining up the engagement and the support piece around major employers making redundancies, and those individuals affected will be directed through the Skills Launchpad service. So we get them on their positive steps towards their positive journey as quickly as possible. Does that
Great.
help?
Very much. Thank you, Emma. So that kind of leads on to a conversation I had with David Drafflin. So in the early days of the announcement that the Theatre Royal was entering a process with over 100 staff, you know, I tried to broker a conversation between the City Council and the Theatre Royal, which I did, in fact, but they were quite right that they said this is going to come up more and more, sadly, and we need a single point, a place people can go to. So I'm so glad that's been launched and sorted out. That's fantastic. And my apologies for the dog going absolutely nuts. He was protecting me from a vicious Amazon delivery that dared to turn up during mid-event. So I apologise about that. And another thing you said there, Emma, is very, very worth thinking about. And as always, Emma, you always speak so passionately and inspirationally. I think Emma for Prime Minister, personally, I think whenever I listen to you
speak, I don't want all those problems.
You're just always so passionate about what you do, which is always really great to hear. Thank you, and thank you for what you do.
Stuart, just very quickly, it's Kirsty. Just the point you mentioned about Plymouth Theatre Royal, it's just to let you know that both Emma and I are in discussions and supporting them with their skills needs.
Brilliant, thank you, because that's as Emma was saying, it's where a city needs to pull together and help its people. It's great, and I've had conversations with the LEP. I sit on the LEP Business Recovery Task Force or Task Group, and the same with the Devon County Council and the Plymouth City Council one. As some of you heard me say before, they all begin with R. There's resurgam, restart, refresh, renew, reinvigorate. I lose track of which meeting I'm in, which strategy meeting is now being looked at. But one thing I was very clear to push on behalf of all our members of the Chamber is that we would like organisations that provide skills, training and education to deliver what business needs, not what pays the most to the skills provider. It's really, really important we join up the skills that business need with those that are being provided. So I'm really pleased to hear what you say there about the conversations that are going on to make sure what is it that our employers and our workforce need, not what do we want to inflict upon them. So that's great. So I noticed we've only got about a minute to go. Are there any burning questions? I see no hands raised, but any burning questions from anyone? No, and I should say, so this is a really important topic, and I think we need to circulate this more widely. So this is being recorded, and we'll share it with our members through the social media and through the newsletter and so forth. So I'd encourage you all to do that. And I'm sure we might well come back and hold an event, perhaps specifically targeted at employers, being that we are the Chamber of Commerce and we have business members, to say this is where you can point your staff. This is what we can do to support you, and to really do exactly what Emma says, to make sure the people of Devon and Plymouth, I've got to say Devon and Plymouth because we're the Devon Chamber of Commerce, look after all our people. And just finally to say that it's been mentioned, the leisure, hospitality and tourism sector has been absolutely decimated by this. It's really, really tough times they're going through, and we're doing everything we can to support them. So I'm not surprised that Centre Parks decided they will take the the furlough incentive because they're going through a tough time. Emma, you've got your hand up. You want to come in briefly before we end?
Yes, please. I was just going to say your point about the sort of regional reach and joining things up. It's important probably for people to understand that Skills Launchpad Plymouth is part of a wider Heart of the Southwest LEPS Skills Launchpad. So what we decided is, rather than as a city we come up with our own name and create more confusion, we would actually join up and just have a localised approach for Plymouth. And I think that's a signal. We want to simplify things. We're not trying to duplicate things. We want to just bring things together coherently. And a big thank you, Stuart and Helen, for inviting us to talk about the subject of skills today. It's been brilliant.
Well, thank you very much, Emma, and you're very welcome. So I must rush because I'm on to my next meeting, beginning with R, to look at the recovery, resurgence, resilience, reinvigoration of business in our region. A quick thank you firstly to, I should have said, to Enterprise Solutions, part of University of Plymouth's Research and Innovation team, for sponsoring these events and the technology that allows us to do it. Thank you so much, Steve Cardew, for your input and support for the Chamber, and the same for Caroline, Kirsty, Sharon, Craig Hampton-Stone, and of course to Emma and Ed for joining us too. Thank you all, really appreciate it, and I hope you see you all soon. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.